Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bigger and Louder. This is John.
As Big Tony.
And I just wanted to say sorry for rambling. Last episode definitely went on a couple tangents with Big Tony. So we're going to get right with Tony.
Yeah, listen. And for those of you who don't know, John's in a number of support groups for working on his rambling because that's something that he's trying to work on. And unfortunately, when you're in those support groups, they ramble with each other. So it's basically he's enabling himself. Oh, man. Yes. So when we last left off, a lot of us, we were talking about just about the economy and capitalism. And again, I want to say this quickly for the record that neither one of us, me particularly, I am not political, nor am I someone who likes to preach the truth, this and that, whatever. But again, like it is a topic that does, affect us in one way or another.
Well, I am somebody who loves to preach and is definitely hyper political. So there you go.
hence the support groups, folks. But we ran out of time, but again, we were really talking about just exactly like the short wind of it was like that people, workers, the middle class, lower middle class, et cetera, they're just not being paid at the rates or wages that they should be at this point in their lives and just where the state of the economy is, regardless of just regardless. That's basically the short wind of it. And, this kind of ties into what I was trying to get to last time with John rambling on. So fuck you, which was, really talking about like, the scholastic and educational system, which is really at the college level, like whether you do like a 4-year stint or if you do like a master's or a graduate degree or a doctorate degree. And a lot of this, I think where a lot of this problems are kind of arriving from is, really like, I guess like we have a lot of students out there who have recently been like taking lawsuits out against their schools because they're paying a fortune to these institutions, right? Whether you're going to a state school or a private school, you're paying for a 4-year degree in some sort of discipline, but these kids are not coming out with any job prospects. And that's sort of like how it was being pitched to them for the last like 100 fucking years, right? Like the idea was like, you go to college, you get a degree, you use that degree for your career, you work 30 years, get your gold watch and have a good life. That's pretty much what it was. But in most recent years that we've been seeing, like that's not really the status quo anymore. We have students who are kind of coming out with degrees in environmental science or theater or art. And again, there's a whole bunch of, loopy sort of like degrees you can get. And
no offense, some loopy degrees. Yeah.
Like my background's in healthcare for a lot of people who don't know. It should have been film, but healthcare is something that I really found very valuable. It's an ongoing.
Should have been football. Should have been playing for the goddamn New York Giants.
That should have been me. But a lot of people don't know, like people know that the healthcare system in this country is really kind of like upside down, left, right. It's every direction. It's very complicated, confusing, and we're trying to find ways to make it work. But that's a side comment. But my point is that a lot of students who go to college really, I mean, the average student doesn't really know what they want to major in the first 2 years. That I was one of those persons, right? And at some point you take classes and you realize, okay, where do my credits kind of land me? And a lot of times they end up getting a degree in something that really has no sort of like, how can I say this nicely? It has no really like other value past the college, right? I guess like when you get a degree in theater, what there's really nothing practical you can do with that. Or if you get a degree in environmental science, you can act, sure, but like you don't go to employer being like, I have a degree in theater, let me be your marketing manager, or let me be
because they don't want to be in marketing.
The point is like it has very little value in the real world for that amount of money you pay towards that degree. It has no actual a lot versus again, like again, well, okay. But again, like I'm not saying entirely, it's all bullshit. But for example, there's other careers and routes you can go that have a bit more weight to it that's worth the money and the time, such as, but not limited to engineering. Like if you want to be an engineer, you've got to have a degree into that. Mechanical engineering.
You have to be good at math. Not
you got to be good, very good at math, right? For many, right? If you want to be a doctor, you've got to go to college. You're not taking someone who's going to learn on the fly. That's number 2. Lawyer's another one. If you want to be in finance, I mean, accountant, right? There's obviously a place.
I disagree. So, I'm in finance, dude, in accounting, and like I disagree with that because, like, I disagree with the sense that, like, look, those degrees don't really teach you that much in the 4 years that you're in college. Like, okay, it didn't really matter to me. Like, quite frankly, bro, the only reason that I'm not a double major and because like my degree is in finance and information technology management, whatever that means, right? With, it's basically like designing systems, not coding them, like designing how they should work, but the only reason that I didn't have theater as a double was because I tore my ACL and I couldn't fulfill like you had to do help backstage for a production and be on stage in front of the curtain for a production. Mm-hmm. And because of my ACL, I never got around to doing it, but I took all the other classes for it. So It's like what it teaches you, bro, is one. And what did I tell you? And I'm glad we're talking about this too, because like, what did I tell you I do before every episode or public speaking engagement that I have?
I don't recall. So
I go like this.
Oh, like that.
Right. And I do that little lip thing. And I do something with my tongue, like
gee, gaga, go.
Like and that was thank you to Miss Jackie Roberts, who also did a run as Will Smith's girlfriend on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But I took her classes because she was like, forget about like the acting chops. She was just like an inspirational person. Taught you how to be calm, and I'm not a calm person, right? So like how to like take deep breaths and count. And I never was able to actually meditate. So like there's a lot that you learn that's like practical. Like I learned and honed into my public speaking skills. I learned how to be comfortable in front of a crowd, how to be vulnerable, how to memorize lines, little things like that, right? But I think like that to me is more important now than looking back at like some of the business things I learned. Like I learned like what a ledger is and debits and credits, and we knew what we were doing, but like it's not that complex. And these classes you take, especially at my school, were not corporate finance. They were all geared towards stock trading and being like some type of investment banker, which like I'm not into that, man. That's like where all the greed goes, right? So like I'm not into that, man. But like ultimately, I believe that the things that you learn with that 4-year degree are, they're not all between the covers of a book. It's more like practical hands-on skills and life skills and dealing with people and interacting with people and learning who you are and being confident in that. Like that you bring about that to the workplace with a piece of paper that says, I sat through these classes.
Well, no. So to your other example, where you said like the actress who was giving you less, like you don't need to spend $300,000 on a 4-year degree to teach people coping mechanisms and ways to deal with their inner anxiety. Or
I went to state school, bro, and at the time, like my school was like I think like 15 grand a year, 16 grand.
Well, whatever the hell comes out to 15 grand, it's gone up now because of inflation.
It's like 40 now. Yeah.
Well, whatever it is like the cost for that piece of paper now is way too much money versus what people are getting back in return on it. So, to the example, let's just say, okay, $40,000. It was upstate New York, right? You pay $40,000 for your first semester or your second semester. I don't know how many, whatever it comes out to. You don't need to pay that much more money to actually teach people how to cope with themselves for acting. That's something you can learn on YouTube. You can actually just deal with seminars. You can actually go with meetup groups and just talk about these things to then reteach that to somebody else and so on and so forth. But back to you is that you're in finance, right? You have a degree in finance. So I guess my question to you is like, without that piece of paper, John, if you were to apply for a job right now, would they hire you without that piece of paper?
Dude, it's tough without getting a second or third piece of paper.
It's just enough, but like
an MBA. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they're making
like that is more about saying, okay, they went through this and they have finished something and committed to something and earned this degree, regardless of how much they've retained and will apply to it in this position, they've gone through it, and like that's the qualification. Like that's the same thing with a fucking fraternity, right? Like, these guys, like they do all this, grotesque stuff together and they drink together and they party together, do whatever together. But it's because like they got to say they went through it. That's what the pledging.
But that doesn't mean shit in the working force, man. Like just because you went through it, if you don't have any type of at the end of the day, life is expensive. That's the end of it. If you can say, "Oh, I went through this thing," and it's like it's notching your belt, give yourself a gold medal. But if you're coming out with a degree in some sort of discipline that has no actual value, then there's no actual big job market to go to a building and say, "Hi, Mr. Employer, I have a degree in environmental science. Give me a job doing." They're gonna be like, what value does this have? This has no practicality to this. We're finding that now students are taking jobs that they could have gotten with either a 2-year degree or no degree at all, working at Starbucks, interning at certain companies or working in the restaurant industry and building their own businesses.
Okay, so why do you think that is? Like, do you think that the jobs are not, I mean, because we're all in a tough place. Like, America's economy and job market is not that great right now. Like, it's tough moving around.
It is very
Like,
tough. You're damn right.
Not just myself, but like a bunch of close friends of ours are having, and family members of mine too, like, are having tough times at all different types of positions. Like, I'm at like a quote unquote executive level, but like by kind of like director level, right? Where these guys are VPs or SVPs. And, again, there are fewer of those jobs. So as you move throughout your career, the job market becomes tough. So what happens is sometimes these people then fall down to that next level and that next level, right? And everybody, it's like a cascading effect where if it's tougher to land, an SVP job, they'll take a job as a VP or VP as a director or a director as a manager, right? And it's like, that's the reason that the job market gets pressed, because there are more people working now than ever. Because as you started last episode with, people, we just touched on now, like the people that thought they were going to be working 35 or 40 years, like, from 25 or, 20 to 65 or whatever, that ain't the case. People are working into their 70s now, or unfortunately beyond, until the day they fucking die. Because they're just making enough to live, if that. So like, to me, this all again goes back to where we were. It's like people are not making enough money. They're not making.
We are talking about the same thing. That's the thing. What I'm saying is like, don't incur another debt to your fucking life that you don't need to. If that's the case, let's assume that's the status quo, which I hope it's not, where
I completely agree.
Like, don't go to college for 4 fucking years, get a degree, and then you're going to go work until you're 70 where that degree didn't do you shit.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Ask you a question. Let's say it's somebody's like aspiration, right, to work and be like own their own coffee shop. So it's like they're still going to need some type of training. And like this would go for anything. And this is where I think maybe like my opinion differs a little bit from some of the other perspectives that are like the quote unquote like liberal or progressive, where I feel that like college is very specific to me. College to me is like a 2 or 4 year, like a junior college, like for 2 years to get your associates, or a 4-year to get your bachelor's. That's like the classic college to me. But if you wanted to get into a trade, or whether that's like HVAC or electrical, carpentry, and like hone a craft, or automotive work, an automotive repair, why wouldn't you want to be the best at that? Right. And to me, that would then say like, okay, yeah, there's a lot you can learn on the job. And if you were lucky enough to like have a family member that was like, hey, I own an auto body shop, or I have a plumbing company, and you were working with them and learning since the time you were a kid, great. Don't go to any type of school. You've probably learned it, but I would still say, man, if you're running that company, getting a 2-year business administration degree and taking some basic accounting classes would probably really help your company. So, and if you don't have somebody that's lucky enough to have the company, and then you're saying, what, I just really love carpentry and I want to build custom cabinets, for somebody's home and kitchen or bathroom, their living room, and build custom cabinets. But I never was, an apprentice to somebody. Wouldn't you want to go to school for that? Right. So it's like, you wouldn't want to go to necessarily a college, but you would want to go to a school or a trade school to hone your craft after high school. Right. Or you're just like, nah, fuck it. You don't need anything. Learn on the job. It's like, I don't want a fucking first year guy building my house.
Listen, I'm going to throw some wrinkles in there. First of all, yes, you can learn on the job, because first of all, like if you want to run a restaurant, or if you, let's say to your point, you want to run a coffee bar, how hard is it for someone to be like, hey, here's your receipt, thank you very much. You work your way up to learn like the rhythm, the pattern of like what it takes to work in a coffee shop, what it takes to order your coffee beans, having a staffing, and eventually you actually learn more by seeing and doing. Just by sitting in the background and watching, you learn a lot versus someone directing shit at you in a classroom. That's
Everybody learns differently. I learn just as well in a classroom as I do on the job.
Well, most people are more visual because they can actually see it. There's a thing called like textbook knowledge and actually using it in practicality, right? This is something you can't teach.
Well, that's also why I don't believe that a master's is worth anything if you haven't had real work experience. But plenty of people get masters without.
Correct. But there are certain industries that regardless, they will not talk to you they will not talk to you with that piece of paper, no matter how much you're going to get an entry level job. It's complete bullshit, but that's a whole other topic. But back to what you mentioned, right?
It's all connected.
I do agree that, yeah, there is a part where I think you should enhance your skills to knowing a bit more about financing or what it's like to work off an Excel sheet and doing things that actually can hold some value to your day to work. I don't think you need to pay a 2-year degree for that or a 4-year degree for that when you can take online courses a la carte. You don't need to, because again, I think it's safe to say that in any degree you get, I bet $1 million right now. When you went to school, just like when I went to school, there were courses you were taking, like, what the fuck? This has no practicality to what I want to do, or has no weight in my actual endeavors. They're just throwing a fucking course saying you have to take these credits.
I agree that having to take, and while I love them and I'm of the rare, like I took an astronomy class, and it was like introduction to astronomy. So it was about,
and what did that do for your career?
Nothing. I took introduction to primates. But here's the thing, I'm not going to argue for that. Like, those are not necessary. I will absolutely admit they are not necessary.
Right.
But it goes back to the type of person that you want to produce. At some point, people became a fucking commodity, and just a line in the books to a company. So what they're trying to produce is a malleable employee that they could come in and put to work and squeeze the juice out of, right? You can't squeeze the juice out of a stone. So if you don't go and have any type of training or any type of knowledge for any type of position, like if you don't know how to turn a fucking coffee machine on, no, they're probably not going to just hire you, right? Like, you're going to say, nah, you need some training. So again, I'm for training. But at some point, people became a commodity. When colleges, that again, they date back, hundreds of years. But when colleges first formed, not everybody went to college, right? Not everybody went to college.
I know it's not for everybody.
Right. Was not for everybody. And it should still be not for everybody. We have diluted the value of a bachelor's degree down to the point where if you can't today simply have one, like if you are just graduating, you have to get an advanced degree, CPA license, any type of master's, or
I understand you're saying the standard is so low right now. Where right, it's like
no, the standard is higher for education. Well, I'm not saying that the standards are higher within the educational system, because they're not. No child left behind. Thank you so much. But the standards are not higher there. The standards are higher for employers saying, I want a master's, I want a CPA, I want an advanced degree. Hey, obviously lawyers and doctors need to be licensed, right? But, I need some type of advanced degree to get this position, or it's preferred, quote unquote. Like, it's not going to be required on a lot of them, but they're going to say preferred. And to that point, why? What if that person has their master's, but hasn't really worked before? If you're filtering people out by masters, and only reading those first, you're not going to
listen, you got me, man, because something, a lot of other countries are doing it right. Like Japan and China seem to have a better, the educational system over there seems to be more like they're light years ahead of us in terms of how we are rewarding people with certain skill sets. And when you're coming out with specific degrees and skills and things like that nature, you got me. I don't know why it's so fucking hard for someone who comes out with, let's say, a dual master's degree in really good disciplines to get work in that field. A lot of times they end up taking jobs that are not actually geared to the money that they were making. And I understand what you're saying too. It's finding yourself, bettering yourself. Hence why you're going through the extra curriculum, regardless of what it costs. But guess what? There's a cost and risk to that. It's let's look at it two ways. Either you can be, Miss Jane Doe, who goes through these courses being yeah, I want to fulfill myself and maximize my education and the experience. But guess what? You're coming out in that fucking hole, lady, with fucking no fucking job prospects. You're in a hole for fucking over $100,000 in school debt when you could have just automatically had taken a job that was already in your wheelhouse with your current skill set. Or do what I suggested, which is the fact that if you're concerned about where you want to go in your endeavors with the school education system or getting a certain degree in some shape or form, and you're not confident that you're going to come out with a job prospect, then you can do one, two things. Work in the industry that you're talking about at the lowest level you can. Okay, let's just use the business. There's two examples I have here. Let's just use the rest. I don't know what example you give. Coffee bar. You work in the coffee shop, learning the industry, and as you work your way up, if that's where you want to be in that particular location, good for you. Or you can start your own business, learning as you're doing. Or what I suggested, which is you don't need to pay $10,000 for a semester of college when you can just take one course on something that's practical to your day to day. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about, right, people who don't make enough money. Well, let me ask you, what's the lesser two evils? Not coming out with a degree and working, or you don't make enough money and on top of it, you have more debt. Like, if you're basically taking on debt you can't pay. And I'm sorry, we're at a point where they're not going to, this colleges are not going to give you a forgiveness pass 10 years or 30 years later when you say you can't pay your debt, because guess what? Now your credit score is ruined. You can't afford any other things you need to do in your life. You're stuck to this bill and you can't work your way out of it. It's impossible. You know, I'm right. Like, it's like, and again, it ties back into like how we are rewarding and incentivizing workers in the workspace.
So let me ask you a chicken or the egg question.
Yeah.
Do you think that people should stop going to school based off your recommendation first? Or do you think employers should change their requirements first?
That's a great question. I don't know which one it is, because it's easy for me to say employers change their requirements. That's going to be my gut to. But according to the laws that we have in this country, they don't have to, right? There are certain things that to abide by, but they don't have to do it. So therefore, if everyone one day says we're going to stop working, or again, if you say I'm not going to school because your fees are too high, right? You're basically forcing the institutions to be like, because again, the colleges are a business. They want your money to go there to come out paying them a shit ton of money. So if you tell them we are no longer
too, like, fun.
Yeah, it's all related. Sports program, the art programs, the culinary programs. It's not just paying teacher salaries, but to keep these programs going. Okay, not to mention taxes and how they maybe work for not-for-profits, whatever you want to call them. But if you tell them we are no longer going to your school, you are forcing their hand to say, okay, we don't have any business coming the door. Why is that? Well, we don't want to pay your fees. Okay, well, if the average student pays $60,000 a semester, we got to get that down to $20,000, if not more. Because no student, because there was a documentary on this on Netflix where the girl said, what 17-year-old kid who signs that loan that you take from the bank with all those high interest rates knows that and 30 years later, you're going to be paying more than what that degree was worth because of all the interest rates you're taking out, whether you take the loan.
Usually they need a cosigner, but you're right. You know, look, man, I agree with you like that. It's super risky these days for kids to take out these loans, but you know, that is just indicative of, you know, one, it's like work ethic needs to still shine through. Like, you can't have kids thinking, which unfortunately they do, that they're going to walk out of school with a piece of paper and be making $100,000 a year.
I agree. It doesn't work like that, but they have no job.
Now, I think like, again, to me, minimum wage in this country should be $100,000 a year for everybody, probably.
Easier said. Well, listen,
right. Easier said than done. You need to have employers say, I value experience, not just a degree. And that's usually the case. But the problem is you need to have something to get you in the door. So in that case, if you do want to be a business owner, yeah, you could start off as like an intern. Like, hey, I'd love to like volunteer, work for like a, you know, low wage in your back office, you know, doing copies, filing, invoicing, you know, accounts receivable, accounts payable. Those types of jobs help you get familiarized with billing and how, you know, debits and credits work and recording revenue and like little things like that. That you could then say, all right, like once you've got exposure to that, maybe apply somewhere else if they're not going to promote you within, which is a whole other thing in our, you know, corporate policy. Go somewhere else and say, hey, I've got a couple years working as an intern here. I'm very familiar with, you know, the AP and AR accounting processes, and I'd like to start getting into working on like monthly close and things like that. Right? I've been around the monthly close and participated in some, but like close and journal entries, and maybe like you take a chop at it. That's absolutely something that could still happen, but you have to be lucky enough to find a company that would take you on.
What's that word you just used? What's that word you just used? Lucky.
Luck.
That's right.
Lucky.
It's luck.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Because you're also, the other thing to your point as well.
And you have to have the work ethic, right?
That do. It's like, there's an old expression. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? It's like, okay, so there's a lot of parents out there who are probably chief headwigs of their companies because many years ago, the working force 30 years ago and beyond that was much more different than where it was now. So if you were fortunate enough to work for a city union or a bigger company where, you know, a lot of times like you're just coming in where literally you could work your way up and get quick job experience. They would rank you up quicker. Let's take the guy who works at a company for 30 years with no college degree, right? Let's just use, I don't know. Let's say let's just say
you don't know anybody because those people don't exist anymore.
Right, because they're all retired. Because
they're all older than us. Yeah, there are parents.
Right, like my father's company. Here's another my father's company, right? And I'm sure your father's company too. Like when they were probably at the peak of their life, they were probably like, okay, like probably came in with probably as much degrees you needed or actually job set, started from the ground up. It was very quickly to move up very quickly. Now, as time went on, the people that they were attracting to those companies were students coming out with like degrees in like biochemical engineering or something so advanced where it looks so attractive on paper. It's like, okay, like who do we take on this next role?
But Anthony, but like that's just so stupid. That I'm sorry. I'm just
it is, but that's what goes on.
That's not what's happening. You're not going to get a biochemical engineer, like somebody who's got a degree in some type of advanced chemistry, applying to the same role and trying and thinking that that they're going to be in the same pool as somebody who just graduated fucking high school and it's like, I went to chemistry class.
No, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about guy A retires from his company, okay, who started there with just very little education because he moved up. We're talking like then and now. Then it was like, okay, your father or someone who we used to know, our grandparents at that time, could literally go to a job, work their way up very quickly because an education really wasn't really mandatory at the time. Now, at the time they retired, you can either A, move somebody up in that company who just started off at the bottom, who probably might have the same work ethic and experience, or you could take on the person coming in with a degree that's kind of relative, and therefore it's like, okay, we're going to take on that because there's a commonality there.
Yeah, I definitely think no matter what you want to do, you need some type of training. You can't think that you are qualified, and this is part of the problem. Watching a couple fucking YouTube videos does not make you an expert.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, taking one online class does not make you an expert, right?
I think if you work
being on the job, being in the field, studying for years, that makes you an expert. What do they say? 10,000 hours. Like,
right. I think there's a case in point to some of this, right? Like, we can use certain examples that, right, like you could either learn the job or maybe your job, you can learn on the job and also, again, get additional training and schooling as needed. But until they actually start making the playing field fair, I'm talking at the college level, what it costs to get a college degree nowadays and all the expenses there. And on top of that, the job prospects when you leave college. And on top of that, the rates in which you're paying people, right? If you were to tell me right now, what would you recommend the world do? Don't go to college. Start your own business. If you can learn a business at the ground up coming out of college or out of high school or trade, go to trade school because there's a big band of that, which that's a whole nother topic. But if you can actually not go to college, avoid a debt, go learn an internship at a company that you or an industry you want, learn it without incurring debt, I'd recommend you do that. Because you're young enough to the point where it's not going to affect you immediately because every generation is going to deal with their own problems. We as millennials are dealing with our own run right now with where the job market is right now. That's that's our kind of like our Achilles heel right now. But that would be my advice. Don't go to college and unless you're going to get a degree in something that requires like a license, that's mandatory. But until they even at the playing field to make it fair and affordable and reasonable, that would be my first advice.
Or free?
Not free, no. Because you got to incentivize people to do the work, right? If everything was for free, this world is not possible.
Well, I mean, Anthony, like you can't just show up to class and they're not going to give you.
That's not what I'm saying.
Like you got to pass the exam.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, I said making affordable, not making it an easy street where I can just pass by just using ChatGPT to put in all my information.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying,
I don't.
Like, if you like, to me, that we should be extending it shouldn't be K through 12. It should be K through 16.
And what do you mean by that?
Like, think about exactly what I just said. Right now, you go through kindergarten through 12th grade. Right now, I would say that they need to extend it to like K through 16, 15 or 16. So rather than just leaving, the public education system at 18 when you quote unquote reach the age of majority for
I see what
most,
you're saying. I see what you're
right?
saying.
You
You
would
mean
extend
increase,
it,
right?
and at that point in time, those last 3 or 4 years, however what it was, would be like what you exactly are talking about. You're taking that low risk to no risk. What do I want to learn and do
Right.
time to
Essentially
say,
extending out
I'm
high
going to
school.
select yes. And
Right.
that's how I feel and why I feel so strongly that the whole like Bernie Sanders and, Elizabeth Warren campaign fell flat on his face is because when you say like, we're going to make college free, it's like, no, I don't want to make college free. I still want there to be higher education that you would start at a later age if you were so inclined. Like if you wanted to be an accountant again, a lawyer, a doctor, a pharmacist, right? Where we were talking about a chiropractor, whatever you want to do, right? Like you can go to your higher education after that, but you would have publicly funded education beyond the K through 12 to say, are you interested in a trade? Are you interested in computer programming? Are you interested in finance or accounting? And you would be able to get, public again, like just like high school, and that like more specific. Like you wouldn't be taking gym class anymore, right? No home ec. Like your day. And
Well, no, I agree with you. Yeah, but like that's not what they're doing with like again, depending on what area of the country you're in or what town you're in, they all call it something different. Like some people call it like where we're from, like in this town in upstate New York, they call it BOCES, where you're learning a trade, right? So if you
but
know
that
what you
was
want to do,
during high school.
but
It was
like
during.
right, correct. Like you would actually
I'm
come out with
talking
a
about
trade,
after high school.
right?
But to me, like that was like, and like I was jealous, quite frankly, because I know like some of our buddies got to do like culinary arts and things like that, beyond just like the trade stuff. But I did have a very strong feeling that a lot of times people were sent to BOCES because they wanted to like forget about them in high school. Like we're gonna send them to BOCES, they're not doing the high school thing, and it wasn't like at will, right, all the time. And I feel like that was like, all right, that shouldn't be the case. Like you should still finish your high school and be part of that curriculum, but then yeah, you can extend beyond that. And
well, if you did that, you never would have went to Albany, man, and gotten your finance degree if you want to take that way out.
but the one thing I wanted to say and to that, Anthony, is I went to Albany, like you said. When I went to visit, I didn't want to go. It's an hour and a half from home. Well, all right, I'm going. Go up there, and it's blistering fucking cold. The wind is cutting through everybody, like we're squinting like this as the wind is cutting through. And I looked at my mom and dad, and I said, I'm not going here. It looks like a jail. 4 years later, I graduated as the vice president, was a resident assistant and an RA for 3 years. Like I did it all, man. Like I did reffing for intramural commissioners. Like, I loved it. I was ingrained in it. So I never thought I would have gone, but I ended up enjoying it, not just for what I did in the classroom, man. And I think that's what the difference is in college. But,
well, yeah, that ties into what I talked about initially in our last episode, or I was trying to get to, is like college at the root of it is an experience. That's what you're paying for. You are paying to, we talk about this. Everyone thinks your college is like you're paying the school to come out with we talk about degrees, because that degree will then get you a job prospect. That job prospect leads to a happy livelihood for the next 50 years of your life, etc. But it's not. We're now learning that you're paying for an experience. That experience can be anything you want it to be, whether it's you want to learn something, well, great, but don't come out thinking you're going to come out with like all these job prospects or making $1 million out of that. If you're experienced to meet new people and to, walk in the courtyard and just do your thing there, that's great. You can do that for free anywhere by going online and starting up a meetup group. Again, like it really goes down like why and how do you want to spend your money? And if it was me now at this age of my life, which I didn't know then, which a lot of college students don't know when they're coming into college, right? Which is, if it was me again, I would not pay to go to college at that rate that they have now. If anything, I would find more unless I absolutely knew what I wanted to do that needed that degree, as I talked about, medical, law, etc., that has a base to it. I would not spend the money going to these places. It's just not worth it unless you're
All right,
going there to make
well,
connection.
we'll see if your wife agrees with that. And when you say, you know what, I don't care if our kids go to college or not, we'll see what she says. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Bigger and Louder. We're going to be coming at you very, very soon since we left you hanging. Thank you so much. This is Johnny.
This is Big Tony.